where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
I want you to imagine you wake up, you turn on your phone, and instead of social media as exists today, you go to a social media, and this social media is specific to your local area, specific to your, and specific to you within your local space in terms of the social media actually it incentivizes you to get into face-to-face contact with other people in your area that are on your wavelength. In terms of this piece, Degoogle is a thing, and I think it's going to be really important in terms of moving forward in the future. For those that don't know, Google isn't our only option for operating systems in our phones, and it's definitely something to look into. I know there's plenty of really warnings about really the insurance, if you're covered by insurance, how really the act of degoogling your phone can interrupt insurance, particularly in terms of certifying this phone. Really, this idea, though, I think is worth really looking into, despite the safety net that insurance providers provide the normal citizenry. And the idea is privacy advocates, a lot of privacy advocates view Google as a bogeyman, and they've been accused of really being just another arm of government. And this is in terms of the January 6th riots, according to Washington Post, Google's location, the location data was, provided to government or to officials through Google. And despite what you may think about January 6th in terms of the actual, the statement itself, the idea is once government doesn't agree with you, you become an enemy. When you become an enemy of government, and your tools that you use every day will ultimately become essentially the same noose that they wrap around your neck. Now, the Play Store particularly doesn't do true diligence related to the apps that they allow in Play Store. They're known for leaking all types of crazy amounts or all types of data, and I'm not sure in terms of the idea of calculators requiring for some reason your location data, and this being this being kind of normalized for people who want to use calculators, for instance. I'm not sure about the calculator app itself, but the idea is this isn't there's a huge gray area where people don't necessarily have to adhere to it becomes really the wild west in terms of your data. A lot of these apps on stores aren't your friend and are free only because of the actual contracts that they get you to sign. Some of these contracts can even change on the flip of a dime. But in terms of really this gray area being the Wild Wild West. I did there's a report, was it data as a means of control, or means of control and data, or something like that. But please look into that. It's also going to be on my channel in terms of there's a guy, I think his name is Byron Lau, I want to say, but he does a good job of really going in and he investigating this area to a sense of where, like, the information, when Trump was being investigated, there was kind of a hesitancy because it would really, really bring to light how much data that these people have access to. And I think it's, like I said, the Wild Wild West, it's equivalent right now, but I think really staying up and staying informed is going to be very much what reels government overreach in. Now, a lot of you guys don't know the idea of, reeling this in, what it looks like in terms of right now, mail, the covering for mail right now, your phone logs, those are considered metadata, or these things are considered metadata, and really you can't expect those, somebody can see that you called for 25 minutes, but the contents of that call, that's kind of a hard line to where the contents of that call, the contents of your mail, opening, the idea of that being a criminal act to open someone's mail, that hard line is really drawn there. But in terms of right now, we see this gray area where that line can be drawn. In terms of this idea, definitely look into it. The idea of degoogling your phone, definitely look into it. If you have a Google Pixel, there's more option, or it's easier to de-Google an actual Google Pixel rather than other phones. I don't really know why. Kind of sounds counterintuitive, counter to the intuition, but the idea is that is something that we really, really do want to look at in terms of creating interest for alternate operating systems for our devices, particularly. This area of really de-Googling a phone in terms of reasons, I mean, you get this idea of really becoming harder to track for any general purpose, but also just kind of when it comes down to disagreeing with the government and them not having access, not having the access that they have access to right now with the general populace, in terms of decreasing that amount of information that they have, is going to be something to look at. Also, when it comes down to de-Googling your phone, a lot of you guys are going to have to make more conscious decisions about, like, the idea of what social medias you choose, and this idea of, for instance, I remember the first time I did Google my phone, and I went to lunch, and I was going to watch a video. this wasn't necessarily something that was made up. This wasn't made up for me. The idea of, or I had to select a video, consciously type in whatever I wanted. And in terms of that conscious selection coming into play, I think is going to really make people think about the choices that they make and make healthier decisions. I'm sure I watched a better video as a result of having to think about what I wanted to watch. Developing your perception and really expanding your own horizon. When it comes down to constructing your phone really, like, a lot of us keep our phone on us 24/7. In terms of the process and making that more, being more conscious of the process of what goes on your phone, there's going to be real power and benefit that isn't necessarily obvious or immediate. But it's definitely something that definitely something that you feel you benefit from, in more ways than, like I said, the obvious. When it comes down to understanding a lot of these companies right now, they view you as a number, and the idea is, the longer I can keep you on my app, the better. And that is, when you turn people into numbers. I want a lot of people to understand, like, I was in a lab studying population biology, and those bacteria were essentially it was my job to turn those bacteria into numbers and predict behavior. The idea is that this can turn very dark very fast for a tremendous amount of people. That thought process is something that's incentivized, and something that is something right now that I think we need to consciously work toward humanizing this element of really humanizing a lot of these companies. And degoogling your phone is probably the main step, in terms of it's going to be inconvenient in terms of the selection process not really being done for you, but the benefit is going to also it's going to be tremendous in terms of really understanding and stepping out of the element of these people having control of your life. I want you to imagine watching a debate, but rather than, like, as these candidates come out, rather than their standard clothing, they're forced to wear their contributors on their outfit in any way that is visible, and have that visible to you. As far as politics is concerned, I'm like, this is I think this is something that a lot of us will benefit from. And honestly, when it comes down to it, it's I consider myself a conspiracy theorist in terms of a lot of things, but I'm reasonable enough, The idea of, like, these people being able to come in and say and essentially talk in front of you, and to a lot of people it may seem as if they're casting an illusion over populations of people. And I think this element of this needs to be explored in terms of how do we make the contribution, or the people who are ultimately backing this campaign stand out. I think it exposes a lot, I think, in terms of the idea of who gets your attention, who is essentially able to get laws passed easier. And the idea is whoever has this amount of money will have more influence over your activity. I personally think this tremendous amount of focus that we place on the president. The president is misplaced, and I think we do better to shift that focus to our local politicians. If we're going to make anybody celebrities, it should be them, because we can touch them, we can have it's way more likely for us to have a conversation with these people and understand these people on a personal level. When it comes down to really this particular race, it's interesting, like even for a conspiracy theorist myself. With that being said, I've been really comfortable on the sidelines, really watching this, essentially this clown show, or this, not necessarily to offend anyone who's heavily invested, but it's kind of when you're able to zoom out, this element of really bringing people like myself, or people who are down further into different rabbit holes, bringing them out to trust the general or the general election process. We have some pretty, I'm including myself into this now. We have some serious work to do, because in terms of this idea of the Blackbird Renaissance, the idea is we're working to renovate society, and the idea is there isn't it's not really it's not a complete separation, but it is outside looking in terms of a lot of what goes on, and trying to understand a lot of what goes on. With that being said, my most strongest motivating factor right now is the idea of vaccine mandates. For some reason, this is acceptable, and it should and this is something that I don't believe should be acceptable. In terms of how we got here, I am very much interested to figure out why we got here, how we got here, and really invested in this idea of really uncovering what's made this a reality for someone who, or in terms of there's no space for anyone to sit comfortably on the sidelines anymore, and the idea is this is very much in the faces of any and everyone that exists in this space here and now. With that being said, if you're excited for this idea of Trump, he's chosen J.D. Vance, and this guy J.D. Vance is backed by Peter Thiel. You can look him up, but I think that this selection as a VP, running mate, should really help people understand that this election campaign will not benefit the working class in any way. I approve this campaign speech, and this is Sleepy for President 2024. No, I'm playing. The chances of really, like I said, getting to personally know anyone is slim. Assuming that you're not a billionaire who can lobby for policies, I don't think we can really expect change. And I don't think change is on the horizon. It's all about choosing the lesser of two evils. And that is, it's come to a point to where really realizing that this idea of democracy and people ultimately deciding how they're going to be governed and governing themselves. This is an experiment, and I don't think that we can really pass this on to the next generation. And this idea of us passing this on to the next generation, I think, really comes. I think it stops here because of simply we see what's on the horizon already. The idea of really meta and this metaverse almost seems ridiculous to a lot of us, but a lot of people are invested in this idea of what the metaverse could potentially provide. And I think this fight gets exponentially harder for the next generation as they go down the line. And I do think that we should take this as our personal responsibility to fix what we have here. In terms of political candidates, like I said, they've become adept at this idea of casting illusion. America is very good at casting illusions over your face, but when it comes down to how to measure a person, other than this idea of political candidates forced to wear their wear stickers that kind of notify who they're who's contributing to their campaigns, or who's lobbying them in any case. I think really the idea is their voting record really being equated to a scorecard in terms of really understanding where a person is and who a person is. And there's, there are a few places or a few websites or that I really want to bring to the front here. And there's govtrack.org and votesmart.org. Now, they'll let you know pretty much a spectrum of things, including, the finances behind their campaign. And this is, really done through open secrets. But when it comes down to a lot of what's happening now are tracking candidates. There are particular websites like Congress.gov that they're going to allow save search alerts, and when it comes down to online offers billing activities or bill activities for specific bills. Legiscan, they provide email alerts for monitored bills and monitored bills and keyword searches. They also offer different levels of alert options based on subscriptions. When it comes down to the Bill Track 50, they allow alerts, but they they come with daily emails to track the bills that are passed in the legislation. They also offer committee hearing reminders for the next 7 days. Legislative reporting service. This provides a tool that is really going to filter for legislative activities and users to create different monitors and track bills according to certain criteria. Stateside, which offers customizable options for legislative monitoring, and also it provides information about the bills introduced, the amendments, and other legislative actions. Like I said, please, this idea of a renovation, you don't necessarily have to agree with the specifics of what I propose, but in terms of understanding that something needs to get done, something needs to be done, very much. This is, like I said, this is something that I would like for you to take up as your responsibility. I want you to imagine coming home from getting groceries with your family, and when you start to, when you bring in the groceries, you start to, think of, you start to, get the pot ready and get ready to cook tonight. But your grandmother stops you and she says, "Hey, look, actually," she takes let's say you have a box of rice in your hand. She takes that, puts that really in the plate, or she takes that to the cabinet, takes out the same version of that particular rice, but it's an older version. She says, "Hey, why don't you cook this instead, and we'll cycle through our food like this from now on." Low-key preparation for emergency situations. Now, I'm not, like, the idea is I figure we don't necessarily want to create a bunker, and if I'm wrong about this in any way, please email me, let me know. I would love to sell you some of my services in terms of actually building, but in terms of low-key preparation, I think there is definite steps to take that are going to be beneficial. And the idea is we're threatened. We face a few threats, and this idea of formal society, the protections of formal society, it's really more of an umbrella, and the idea of this umbrella and what it pertains to, or what can be used to protect us. I'd like us to really get used to this idea of not necessarily having not having protections that we think we have in a quote unquote first world society. The first idea is, one of the main threats is the internet shutdown, and this is the idea is it's becoming increasingly popular for governments to control us peasants, and like basically just make sure that we don't get out of line in a lot of different ways. You can bet there's a lot of investments around, controlling, where the internet shutdown can occur, and things of that nature. But in terms of understanding right now, if there is in any sense a tyrannical government, internet shutdown can be used, and this is something. This idea of an internet shutdown is, it's legal within power, and as you can imagine, the legislation the populace becoming somehow fulfilling this need for an overt threat in terms of this idea of what is possible needs to really be understood. In terms of actually getting into this, Access Now does a pretty good job of really going through this idea of there's an article on Access Now that shows how this idea is becoming increasingly popular amongst governments, and really worth looking. It's worth looking at. I'll definitely link that. When it comes down to other options or other facets that we need to look out for, the idea of a nuclear war, and it's not something that anybody really wants to look at or dive into, but the chances are becoming increasingly popular among our leaders right now of mass suicide being the only option, and I say mass suicide because this is essentially mass suicide, regardless of how many bombs go off. The fact of dropping one bomb, that we need to definitely view it as that, and it does look foolish. I think if we are watched by any species that are extraterrestrial, it does look foolish, and we need to definitely find a way to get past this point of being an active threat that anybody can make. But if you're into this idea of keeping track of the possibilities, there's a doomsday clock countdown on the bulletin, and I will say there have been no increase, or there has been no change in terms of an increased chance of a nuclear war from 2023 to 2024, and it doesn't. I mean, it just doesn't look very like something that makes. It doesn't look very hopeful in terms of this change, this idea of not changing and not becoming increasingly likely, because it's already like there. I think we're at like I want to say, what are we at, 90 minutes or 90 seconds on this clock countdown or something like that, and it's gone down it's gone quite far already. Definitely something to look out for, and we'll go over this a little bit later. And the idea of lastly, in terms of threats to look out for that I think that are on the top, infrastructure failure. We got a C minus on this, is according to our own analysis in terms of the engineers, the National Association of Engineers or something like that. This is according to their analysis, and we got a C minus. Particularly, I'm worried particularly about the power grid and the idea of overloading the power grid based on the technologies and how the technologies are increasing, and us finding there's nobody's talking about what needs to be done in terms of really becoming more resilient to this idea of a failure in the future and what that would entail. Not really hopeful about politicians this in terms of this becoming a this isn't necessarily like sexy to talk about. This isn't gonna get anybody like riled up emotionally, but in terms of the lack of investment in our infrastructure, it is a tremendous portion, I believe, of what makes us a first world society. And when it comes down to the element of really lack of clean water, like in Flint, I think that should ultimately that should face quite a bit of consequences in terms of the idea of threatening our status as a first world society in general. The idea here is low-key prep is because we need to keep calm and pretend like nothing is happening and nothing can go wrong. And I think we have to kind of be okay with this element of what could go wrong. And when it comes down to this idea of low-key prep, there's a few 5 things. One, definitely what you want to do is meet your neighbors, and this can definitely be awkward, but the idea is physically meeting who's around you, definitely, but also go to meetups. If you're in Colorado, we're gonna have like this book club, and come out and meet some people, please, or come out and meet some people, being pretty nice. Knowing more people is really gonna help increase your resiliency in terms of what's possible. And I'm definitely recommending knowing as many people as possible, but also like kind of getting into like understanding like tight-knit groups as well, in terms of having chances are, if any of this goes, if our society does fall into chaos, communes will likely be a thing. Who you're going to be in that commune with, how you're going to live, definitely something to start to think about, at least in terms of right now. Number 2 is understanding where you can go in case of any emergency. The idea right now is you can go to ready.gov or FEMA, but if you don't necessarily trust the government, then you may want to look into other locations, and it's going to be specific to a specific person. Number 3 is having a meeting spot for your family and loved ones. Chances are is that you live in a pattern, and let's say you go to work at an office still. The idea is, if things go wrong there versus things going wrong at the nighttime when you're at home, think about where you're going to go, how you're going to do things differently. And if your family's like in the middle of the day, if it's in the middle of the day, you need to think about really meetup spots that are, for everyone to come together. When people really highly underestimate this concept of food and medication. And in the beginning, we talked a little bit about, I mentioned how, grandma stops you from getting, from using the new rice and going to the rice that's about to expire, and that doesn't, it doesn't, when it comes down to low-key resilience, this is really going to be key, starting to stock up on things slowly but surely. This is going to be, of course, when it comes down to food, but also medications as well. People don't understand, or people underestimate just how much this idea of the value in having medications readily available in these situations. Definitely something to look out for, definitely something to watch out for. If you have really a lot of addictions that are just kind of inherent to society, like coffee is a huge one, coffee, tea, we don't really have an understanding of life without these things, but it's a very real difference that we have to think about more so. Now, I'm gonna review a survival guide soon in terms of on the channel, and please look out for that. When it comes down, or in the meantime, we'll kind of there'll be something that really, I believe it is, who is this? The Holistic Prepper podcast. You can check that out for different things as well. It's pretty good in terms of, or it's pretty thorough in terms of really expecting like nuclear apocalyptic things and stuff like that. When it comes down to number 5, get a solar panel charger, and this idea of a solar panel charger is going to be useful in a lot of cases, but also if when it comes down to this idea of emergencies, there's a big chance that this we'll go through temporary emergencies, and the idea of solar panel chargers is something that could make a huge difference. And apparently, people who experienced the Texas outage in 2024 and 2021, this they didn't have those those little those solar chargers would have made a tremendous difference for a lot of these guys. When it comes down to a lot of preparation, you can download the mesh networking app, like something like Briar, and this is BRIAR, and the idea is this is really a messaging app that uses Bluetooth rather than the local the cell phones or the cell phone towers or the internet as we know it. In terms of I think they call it a mesh network, and the idea is that this kind of, you don't necessarily, like, it creates a network from a location standpoint, as opposed to the internet being, connecting everybody at once. And when it comes down to a lot of situations like this, information is going to be key, and how we get information, how we can get information is going to be something that we want to look at more. Like I said, you can look at the networking app, or the network app, Briar, and there's different ones too, but and hopefully I'll never have to completely check this out without internet, but definitely look at these particular ideas in terms of be more familiar with them and starting to cook up familiarity with these guys. Now, like I said, when it comes down to preparing for the idea of a of a nuclear apocalypse, it's, if you're one of the unlucky survivors of a nuclear apocalypse, definitely you're gonna want to really understand the world in a lot of different ways. And like I said before, the Holistic Prepper podcast, there's a segment, I think it's about 50 minutes long, but he really goes into a lot of details, and it's really good. When it comes down to the infrastructure failures and the infrastructure's failing, knowing how to purify water is going to be good. And I hope this isn't news for anyone, but please, the idea of drinking from streams isn't something that anybody should recommend. And the idea is we've normalized pretty much poisoning our natural environment, and it's like I said, it's normal. But right now, in the meantime, I'm gonna review some books, try to get you guys, or try to get more informed on this idea of how to prepare. but in the meantime, get some purification tablets and filters. When it comes down to low-key prep, the idea is, just start to put these things together and put them to the side, and you'd be surprised about how much you benefit. Also, when it comes down to low-key prep, take some gardening classes, start understanding gardening more, and the idea of gardening. There was some kind of study done in China where, this idea of they underwent some kind of mass, mass hunger event where people who actively had who had some kind of, who were growing gardens in their, out on their balconies did a lot better than people who didn't have that. And that's something to definitely look out for in terms of if you can start something, even if it's small, just starting to get into that. I want you to imagine a conversation with you and an older gentleman, whether this is your boss or your dad, it doesn't really matter. This older gentleman tells you that really about, you know him for being in this place in society in terms of merely being held high in society. And he tells you about how the measure of how powerful any person is in a society is the gap between what the normal person can get away with and they can get away with. Now, this is when it comes down to this idea of Jeffrey Epstein. We know this guy for essentially running a sex ring that is filled with minors, but this is these ideas. It kind of feels like this is something that is definitely deserving of, I won't say that it's over-reported, although some people claim that, some people make that claim that it may be over-reported. It's only just that I'll say that his other crimes are under-reported. And this guy is, he's into, where he has been a part of a system and an integral part of a system of that's involved, like in terms of his crimes particularly. We're talking about financial crimes, a background that's really like finance heavy, and in terms of how when we dig into and understand Epstein, I want you guys to understand that this is going to stretch well past what, this idea of running a sex ring filled with minors. And it almost feels like a lot of people are disgusted with this for good reason, but it almost serves as a shield for the people who benefited, who benefit in ways of being involved in the financial crimes. When it comes down to really this idea of this doesn't help my current status as a as a conspiracy theorist in the least bit, because when it comes down to really how he died, he this idea of he was able to hang himself in a cell where essentially he could stand up in terms of hanging. This is a story that is very flimsy. The cameras went out, or the idea is that the cameras went out, but what's really disturbing is the DOJ came out with an official report that has found that there is no evidence, there's nothing to look at here, and this coupled with the fact that we still don't have this list of really like his known, or this list of essentially like high profile pedophiles, and this is quite disturbing, but I think it's something that we need to look at, because a lot of us can kind of, it says a lot that we wouldn't be surprised about who's on that list, but in terms of the influence that these people have over our life, over our daily lives, this is something that is, in terms of turning this over to the next generation, this is definitely something that should be solved, and something that we need to worry about today. Now, like I said, the Department of Justice is willing to stand by this, and you're willing to. This is like, to stand by this. I don't want to make any I don't want to make any statements about what that means, about really what that suggests. But I will say it doesn't look good. Now, when it comes down to this idea of Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes, there's a report done by Whitney Webb, and this goes in, or there's kind of not a report, but it's like two books that I recommend by Whitney Webb, and this is One Nation Under Blackmail. And these are volumes 1 and 2. Now, volume 1 was really describing the network and how this network kind of grows into place, and how it grows into place to support someone like Epstein to be able to ascend to the top. At some point, I forget who said this, but the idea of somebody noted, Epstein, he's like a genius, and he doesn't have a moral compass, and they said it to where it sounded like a good thing, and it makes me think about a lot of it doesn't matter how hard someone works when they have a moral compass, because there are things that simply, this idea of kind of creating a ceiling for people with moral compass. It's very much real, and it felt real at that point, to where this guy who was involved with government was able to make the statement. But definitely. Like I said, look into the books, and when it comes down to like repairing society. I don't think this is something that needs to be formal. Like when I say formally, this needs to be investigated closer and by parties who aren't necessarily being pressured from, from people who would benefit from this idea of Epstein disappearing. Definitely. Essentially, like I said, it definitely, like, I mean, if you're trying to bring your conspiracy friends into the main fold, and the DOJ actually makes an official like report or statement, it's definitely I really want people to realize how hard it is for people to essentially look at this case, or look at society and take it seriously from the outside. I want you to imagine going to a tech store, and when you go into this tech store, you are buying a laptop, but upon buying a laptop, you realize, or the people who give you that laptop, they inform you, hey, look, you're actually going to have access that is a bit limited, and we're going to basically place you under this limitation that is essentially artificial intelligence maintains. And the idea is you've been doing some things that don't necessarily agree with the people who hold power in the government right now. Artificial intelligence, and really when it comes down to this boom of artificial intelligence, it seems to have vanished, like up and vanished. And the idea is, I don't see it on my YouTube timeline, and I'm expecting that a lot of you guys probably have experienced the same. In terms of this idea of not appearing on timelines, I don't want people to take this as a good thing, or take this as this was kind of the next buzz thing. I think that people realized what they could do and what they could extract from this element of artificial intelligence, and they know where they can cut back in terms of they can use less people to make more money. And I really, really do encourage you guys to pay attention. When it comes down to not using social media as a measuring tool, in terms of your timeline as a measuring tool of how relevant something is, I definitely discourage you from doing that. I would really encourage us to particularly get involved into in understanding AI from a standpoint of I think when it comes down to really a beginner, even just a beginner's course. Coursera has a course called AI for Everyone, and just to have a broad understanding, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to know every single adaptation that comes out, but having that broad understanding, I think, would help you not be caught on the back foot. When it comes down to this disappearance, it's actually, I think we should view it more as a bad thing, because we do understand. I have a personal understanding to where I have no background in making apps of any kind, but I was, but I had I'm not, I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't consider myself tech savvy when compared to, like people out there. But when it comes down to understanding, like, how to navigate, the internet, some applications and do things on the computer, I was able to take my limited knowledge and create an app. And that didn't seem possible before this. And it does make me think about really what someone who knew what they were doing could do. And I do, like I said, they're looking for all kinds of ways. I think Adobe was in the news about really, what kind of, they were trying to basically say that every art piece created on Adobe could essentially be used for them in their AI. And what I've learned about privacy, this idea of how a lot of companies are lobbying to violate this idea of, privacy by default. That coupled with, this idea of AI, I think we're seeing Adobe in the, we see things like Adobe, but there are instances that where they're not going to come to light, and we can't expect them to come to light. When it comes down to AI in particular, I think this idea of open source really provides more opportunity. And the idea of open source being, I have access to AI if I don't necessarily, even without internet. I think the possibilities there are in our favor, are in the people's favor more so than a few companies having access to everything that goes through. And very much when it comes down to centralization, I think we really have to be careful about the increased chances. There's a guy that tries to design silos and bunkers for rich people, and this was on some kind of podcast that I listened to before, and this idea of he was asked, well, what what do a lot of these guys ask for? And they want to make sure that they have security, and he tells them to really invest more in the community, because you have to have people in terms of security. You have to have guards and all this, you have to rely on people. More people watching people starve, that increases the chances of somebody essentially saying, oh yeah, violating security for the idea of, feeding, a child is starving. And in this particular case, this guy was saying, invest in your community. And what I'm saying is this element of AI, and that kind of takes, or that the centralization that occurs, that puts the power in less people's hands. So in terms of the likelihood is, being dramatically decreased, with less people in that room making that decision. Very much something that we should be worried about in terms of the increase, the increased opportunity for people who are wealthy to have power over those the have-nots of the world. In terms of, like I said, open source AI does definitely seem hopeful, and I encourage you guys to really understand like AI, but also even download an open source model that works. And the newest one right now is Reflection and the 70B, and this stuff changes pretty rapidly. I think from like 1 month to the next, like you have like new models released. But this element of having something, it makes me hopeful only in the idea of being able to, having access to AI when things go off. It makes me hopeful in the idea of it makes it more possible for less more the control that someone can hold, that one person holds, really being minimized. And I think centralization offers a few comforts, but I think that it comes at a tremendous risk, enough to where we can kind of view it as I view it as more of really, when it comes down to centralization versus decentralization, I'm more of a fan of decentralization, and I encourage you guys to understand why, and really understand what you can do there. I want you guys to imagine a famous comedian interviewed by by someone prevalent, and I want you guys to imagine this comedian really telling the world that a lot is going to take place within this next year that's coming. Now, when it comes down to rap beef and the music and entertainment, I personally I don't necessarily cover it, but I think what we're witnessing now is a rap beef between rappers Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and the reason why this is, I think, really, really something that should be covered is because I think we're seeing the collapse of the music industry. And this becomes even more important when really we can equate the music industry to the Colosseum and the gladiators, in the gladiator ring in the Colosseum. And the idea is that we need to keep these people distracted and making sure that they don't think about, essentially like how much we're robbing them. And this idea of Drake and Kendrick Lamar, I want you guys to understand that this is, this happening this year is kind of giving credence to the idea of this comedian Katt Williams. That he had kind of an explosive interview in the beginning of this year, January, or I think it was January, but like where he predicted that a lot of people would be exposed this year for a lot of different things, and you'd see when it comes down to this beef in particular. Kendrick Lamar is a kind of thought to be on tier with the guys like Drake and J. Cole, and Drake decided, or this it's a lot to say about the battle in particular, but when it comes down to Drake, it seemed that he thought that he could use really stacks of money to essentially override Kendrick Lamar. And when it comes down to Kendrick Lamar, it's a clear understanding of that he is for a lot of he is reminiscent of when it comes the rap origins in terms of how things got started with rap, and I think it's important because it's important for people who listen to rap to understand how far this guy was able to get with money, and how much he was able to essentially buy with this power. And I really hope it kind of forces people to look in the mirror, because this guy's being now this rap beef is kind of it exposes a different side of things that I think a lot of us really subconsciously understood, but now more consciously, like it's brought more into conscious, in terms of more into focus, in terms of this idea of what was represented by rappers like Drake, and very much on par with this element of being able to on par with the idea of some things you really just can't buy. And I think that right there is something that it's a pill that this Drake had to swallow, and I'm really hoping that a lot of people understand that, like when it comes down to selling your soul, that means I can print you out, and I can print you out on a a timeline of however many minutes, but I can print out and pay for you. It's something that a lot of people, I think, really need to understand that. And if you want to, and this is to be coupled with, not to understate this by any means, but the fall of Diddy as well, in terms of this idea of the music industry collapsing, or the music industry in particular collapsing. The fall of Diddy as well is something that I think a lot of people should pay attention to, because these are people who were held in high regard in society, or in parts of our society, and I really want that to be understood, that essentially, I'd really like people to understand that there's this coliseum, this comparison of the rap industry to a coliseum, or and what's being done now in terms of how this impacts life, and in terms of music in the future, and how music really will progress in the future. If you are interested in following the fall of Diddy, or really this rap battle in general, definitely I'd recommend Tisa Tells on YouTube. That's TISA Tells, TELLS. And I am, when it comes down to this, what's being referred to now as the Katt Williams Curse, I think, I'm really hoping it's a gift that's not done given.